Hello everyone, welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Leitinger. And before we get into this episode, a quick shout out to my sponsor, Reband. They really helped me this last week in Mexico with their apparel, their tape, and obviously their knee pads, which held up really good on that new floor we got to play on. But I really want to shout out their tape now because I really used it for the first time on different people. And it was perfect for dodgeball. It was easy to rip, very easy to handle. The glue stuck well and it was very stable. So people were very happy with it, which made me happy. So if you want to check out any of their apparel, tape or knee bands or anything else, go to the website reband.com and use the code LEITINGER10 at checkout for 10% off. And without any further ado, let's get into this episode with the mastermind behind the Champions Tour, Mr. Armando Valdes, and the winner of this year's edition, Brandon Kelley. So Brandon, you haven't been on the podcast before. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I've been playing competitive dodgeball for 11 years now. I started playing at Sky Zone when I was 16, and then I really took it serious when I was 18 years old, and that's where I met Mikey McGee as a young 13-year-old kid with pajama pants on, just destroying adults. And he's always had that talent since he was 13, and him and I are the longest tenured teammates in the area. And we went to Las Vegas and we took second place together. So we knew the success was going to be happening at some point in our careers. A few years later, we met Mr. Valdes when he was on Davis Dodgeball. And in 2017, we joined our teams, and I've been Armando's teammate now since 2017. And we always say we love the winning on this team, but to be honest, the best part is all the memories we've created off the court, with all the antics and all the banter and playing jokes on each other. Those are the things we'll always remember. So we always used to play in the United States doing our East Coast tournaments, and once a year we would go to nationals, and we've had a few tough losses on the national stage, and it took us a long time as a team to finally get over the hump to be champions. And we were a team for 5 years before we claimed our first national championship. And I think that was the time we really caught our stride as a team. And then 2 years ago was when we came to Vienna Calling and saw how cloth dodgeball is truly supposed to be played. I played for Team USA in 2022, and it just wasn't the same as the way the Europeans, specifically Austria, play the game. And I was envious on how good the quality of dodgeball was across the pond. And now I think having the new guys from Northern Ireland, they've really showed us like a lot of intelligence towards the game and how to truly play it, even though it's only been two tournaments. Those guys have really opened our eyes on how to take our cloth game individually and as a team to the next level.
We could definitely see that and appreciate that. So, as you said, we've played in 2022 in Edmonton in Canada against each other. And then afterwards, I think Vienna Calling was it 2024, right? Was
Yes.
the first time. Yeah. And so in between, obviously, we didn't know anything about dodgeball in the US before Edmonton. And then seeing you as a team come over to Vienna Calling, which was also like a first for us because we've never traveled for club tournaments over the pond or anywhere else than Europe. So it was really cool to see that kind of commitment and that you wanted to experience different forms of cloth dodgeball. So you said you wanted to get a feeling for what glove dodgeball is in Europe. Armando, maybe you're the mastermind or the chief of Boston Anarchy. Why did you make the decision to come to Vienna Calling to those 2 years ago?
Thanks, Stefan. It's great to be here, as usual, and thanks for having me. Vienna Calling was a team decision, actually, because we were traveling to the US, and as Brandon said, we had a rough start to our team, but eventually, after about 4 or 5 years, we started getting to a place where we were winning most of the tournaments we were playing in. And traveling throughout the US is actually very expensive. It's a big country, and in some cases it was actually more expensive than going to Europe. So we just decided to start going over there more for two reasons. One was that the level of competition for cloth was much higher, and second, it was also not only dodgeball, but we also got to experience travel and being in other places that we had not been before as a team.
Yeah.
So because of those two reasons, it just felt natural to start going over there. And once we experienced the first Vienna Calling, we were just hooked and really wanted to go back for more.
Awesome. And so for you, Brandon, take me back maybe to 2022. What has changed about your dodgeball, cloth dodgeball experience from back in the United States, then playing the European countries at Worlds, and then playing with the NI guys for the last two tournaments? Like, how has the meta shifted for you in terms of dodgeball strategy or cloth dodgeball in general?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that I'm going to get out a lot more often in this type of dodgeball, specifically where we came from in 8.5, where I could just survive as long as I could and wait for the right ball to come to me. What I've noticed with this cloth dodgeball style is you have to make the right play at the right time, and sometimes that means a good player like yourself or myself, we're going to get out, but if it's the right play to make, it's up to your team to capitalize and win the game. Another thing is I've learned to be a lot quicker as a play caller when our first play callers are eliminated, because we struggled a lot as a team in the beginning on the play two call. Um, that was something that we didn't really have a plan for, and we used to always have to throw down to one ball, and then giving good teams four ball plays all the time is a nightmare.
Absolutely. So, we saw a little bit of like the discrepancy between European and US dodgeball last weekend when you see the Hex guys, and I talked to a lot of them afterwards as well, where they were like experiencing it. Most of them for the first time. Some have been to Worlds or stuff like that, but still like the shift in game speed and how the game is played tactically for some was quite new. So when you play at the national stage, obviously Hex is one of your biggest rivals there in cloth. How do you feel like the game is different on the national stage compared to what you see in Europe or now at the Champions Tour?
First and foremost, the USA uses different types of cloth balls. They're not the ones that we just played with. So that is definitely a huge factor in the difference. Um, in the USA, I'd say um, the accuracy really isn't the same as the Europeans. They might have stronger arms in the USA, but as a whole, as a country, the accuracy compared to Europe is completely different. I think Europe, um, they can really track your movement and put a ball on you, whereas a lot of USA players are just looking for the big hit on a chest or, trying to throw the ball as hard as they can and get you. So I think that a lot of teams just rely on pure talent rather than working as a team to defeat the opponent.
And for you as a team, first of all, what kind of balls do you use?
The USA got a partnership with this company called Baden, and they have no they have basically no skin on the ball. There's no way to really grip it the same way as uh, the European ball, and there's no nipple that sticks out to put your grip on.
Okay.
So they're a lot more slick as a ball. It's actually closer to a volleyball slash handball. Um,
Really?
yeah, they're very slick.
So Baden is a brand that mainly specializes in volleyball. So one of their main considerations for making balls is making sure that the valve or the nipple, as Brandon said, does not stick out,
Mhm.
because apparently that's a important aspect of balls in volleyball. Uh, Whereas for dodgeball, that's not necessarily the case, because many people try to use the valve for grip. And the second thing is that they chose nylon as a material for cover, which is a lot slicker than what we're used to
Mhm.
in other places.
So were they like a little bit comparable to the balls we played at UDO with? Because those were nylon, I think, as well.
Yes, but the cloth is way thinner, so it's even slicker.
Okay. Because I think at Worlds in 2018 in the US, we also had different balls who also had fewer seams and were really slick. I have one of them around here somewhere. And those were really weird to grip in the beginning. And also, it was much harder to catch them because they were like way bouncier than our cloth balls. Does that
So
sound
that,
familiar?
Brandon, I'm not sure if that's the same for you, but it seems it describes what we play with in the US very accurately.
Okay.
That's like a perfect comparison.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that is weird. So is there a plan to change that, or are you guys gonna stick with those balls and then just be happy when you come to Europe or to international tournaments that you can hold a ball now?
That's exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to change their partnership. I think they got a really good deal um, with this company. So, as a business standpoint, it makes sense.
Okay. Okay. That's weird. Have to try those balls out at some point. All right, so
National.
balls are different, gameplay a little bit different, and obviously you learned now a lot from the NI guys. Maybe Armando, take me through like what happened from UDO to Mexico City in terms of playing tactics. Like what did you talk about? How did you prepare for this tournament with the NI boys?
So we had a lot of sessions with them where we covered different teams, different players from those teams, what they their tendencies, things we could exploit, and those helped a lot in the end. Were when we were on the court, especially because we were in a very tough group,
Mm,
and it was important to have mental notes of what to do in certain situations coming into the games, and particularly because there was not going to be a lot of time between game and game, so we wouldn't have a lot of time to go back to the hotel and study film. We did with Austria, I mean with the Nutcrackers a little bit, but definitely for our game against London, we would not have much time to go back and regroup.
mm.
So we made sure that we were prepared going into the court.
All right. So mostly just per video chat, getting over tactics. And did you also like create a new way of calling for you guys, or did you sort of apply some NI tactics, or did you um, fuse them together with the old anarchy tactics, or did you just create something new there?
So we had some overlap already between the way NI and Boston used to call plays, and that helped a lot. We found that in nationals, which was sort of our mutual tryout
Mhm.
between both us and Adam and Murphy at the time, and the larger group later. But we found that our calling styles were similar.
Mhm.
It was just perhaps slightly different ways of approaching the game. So as the tournaments progressed, we started getting more used to working in initially in pairs and then starting to mix up. So for instance, in UDO, what we were trying to do a lot was trying Brandon and Mike always be on the court together, and same with Adam and Murphy, and then Johnny and Josh, and so on. So working on those pairs to make sure that people were familiar with the other players they were playing on the court at any one time, but eventually trying to mix it up. So when we ended up in situations where those pairs were not available because of eliminations, we could still perform.
Mhm. Okay. And so, Armando, I hope a big weight has lifted off your shoulders after last week. Um, Take me a little bit. Obviously, we talked in the last episode a bit about the Champions Tour, but now in hindsight, like take me a little bit through those last few weeks before the tournament, everything around it, what went through your head, how much sleep did you get, what did you have to do?
So the last few weeks were actually not as hectic as I expected. The only challenges in the end were mainly around travel, because Telemundo was really interested in having a follow-up interview to the one we had, I think, about a month and a half ago with Shorta and myself.
Hmm.
So just trying to coordinate that, and having Finn from London Storm fly all the way to Miami from London for the interview, and being there with him. It took a little bit more time, and obviously that um, sleep is where we have to cut when you only have 24 hours in a day. But uh, logistics wise, it was not that challenging. There were of course some obstacles to navigate. For instance, the floor for the tournament was stuck in customs for almost 4 weeks, which was way over what I had expected. But so trying to find alternatives just in case it didn't go out of customs in time, and uh, contacting providers for last second changes. That was a little bit stressful, but in the end, everything worked out.
Awesome. How did you like go about recruiting all those people that helped run the tournament smoothly in Mexico City? And how many people were involved in the end from an organization point?
So one of the advantages we have in this tournament, compared to when I organized Worlds in 2019 in Cancun, was that the community of dodgeball in Mexico, is especially Mexico City and the surrounding states, is really, really big and really passionate.
Mm.
So it was not that difficult to get volunteers this time around for things that ensured that everyone was where they were supposed to be at the correct time, setting up the court even. Whereas in Cancun, we didn't really have a community, so it was really, really hard to do the same. And actually, a huge thanks and shout out for everyone that helped. Without their help, I don't think we would have been able to have the level of production we did. And then the second component was obviously paid, in terms of, for instance, the referee community, the production team. They ended up having 37 people on site. So just a taste of what it takes to get Dodgeball to the production level we achieved. But that's the vision, right? So to build from here.
Yeah, for sure. Because I already said it a few times, like everything seemed extremely professional. I felt as much of a pro athlete as I've ever felt before. Like from the getting picked up at the airport with our own cars, having someone who always took us places, and like having always that one person that took care of us and we could communicate with was really awesome and also seemed very professional, and I enjoyed that a lot. But also the production, the floor, the room, everything was very, very professional, and you could see that there were many, many people involved. So on the one side, it was amazing to see that, but on the other hand, it made me almost a little sad to see how much space is between what we're used to and what true high level production really is. And it seems like that is still a bit of room to cover or space to cover for us to get there. Because, as you said, lots of volunteers, lots of people you had to pay to get there. So, all in all, how many people with volunteers and people you paid were involved in the organizational side?
I would say in total for the 2 days of the tournament, including the transportation professionals, were about 100 people total.
100 people. Okay.
But as you said, like there were really two main goals for this event for me, and I think in the end we met them both. One was to create a product that we could take to sponsors and tell them, okay, so this is dodgeball. This is what we really mean when we say dodgeball. Don't think about the movie. Don't think about the game you played when you were young. This is where dodgeball is right now, and this is where it can be. So that was really important, and number one. But number two, I also wanted to show athletes, many of whom might not have had a professional sports background in the past, what it means to be a professional.
Mhm.
And in some cases, we also went a little bit above and beyond. So I think almost no league pays for team transportation, for instance, uh, even hotels. But we wanted to do that because we knew that most of the teams we were inviting did not have the budget to do that for their athletes. And in the end, that's what happens. The team pays for the hotel, the team pays for transportation, and we wanted to give athletes a taste of what it would feel if their teams were able to do that. Which, by the way, is one of the things we really want to do, to be able to have sponsors that sponsor not only the league but also the teams, the athletes. So those costs are taken care of by external money and not having the players pay for everything they do.
All right, yeah, that sounds like the dream. So, Brandon, when you hear that, obviously you've been around dodgeball and around Armando for a few years now. How was it for you as a player, knowing that this is basically your tournament, and there was a lot of expectations on you guys to perform as well, and you've put in a lot of work. How did it feel to come to Mexico City and play in front of the cameras?
Um, First of all, I have to say I'm very, very proud and happy to know Armando in at this point. Like he pulled it off. It was a lot of stress on him and he pulled it off. I can't say anything better. But as a player, it reminded me of being back at the Sky Zone tournament because they had a main court with cameras and the studio lights, and just to have one court with everybody watching you, it just made it such a great platform to be a player on. And I thought the court was beautiful. I liked it. Having all the referees and um, the replay, and even my family at home, family and friends watching at home, they couldn't believe the production quality to be able to watch at home. I thought it was spectacular. I don't know how I'm gonna do going back to what we're used to after playing in that, but it was incredible. It was just incredible.
Yeah, I can definitely second that. As you said, the floor was different. The floor was new. I personally love the floor because I'm not the fastest of player. I'm mediocre fast, but my play depends on a lot of having grip, but also being very specific with my movement. And I loved that you only had the dodgeball lines for the first time, I think, in my dodgeball career. Maybe in the Euros at Scotland, we had a special floor as well, but pretty much every dodgeballer is used to having to select his lines between thousands of different ones. So that was really cool to play on. And also, it looks so much better on video production when you only have those lines. But Armando, talk to me a little bit about the floor. How did you get the floor? How did you pick and choose it? And what did you think about it? And how much did it cost?
So the floor is always tough in Mexico. Not only where we played, which was not a sports arena, as you know,
Mhm.
but more of something we consider a studio. And
Yeah.
mainly, we picked it for the lighting. We picked it up for the way we could work with the space to create nice angles for the camera. But obviously, they didn't have sports flooring, so we knew from the beginning that we had to find one. We talked to a lot of providers. Most of them had solutions that were more permanent, and those were obviously disqualified from the start because we could not have a permanent floor in that space. And eventually, what we found out was the flooring solution that most of the providers recommended was one that's used for basketball, 3x3 outside, just because of its ability to being able to assemble and disassemble it very fast. Of course, there's also some other solutions that the NBA uses for their courts, and those are way over budget because of the way they work. But this was a good trade-off between efficiency and cost. So that's why we selected it. And to answer your question in terms of cost, the floor itself is about $15,000, and then getting into Mexico, it was almost the same, just because of customs and storage and transportation, things like that.
Okay. And did you get it out of Mexico again as well, or did you leave it there?
So I'm still thinking what to do with the floor. Most likely, we will donate it to a school because taking out it will almost cost the same as the floor itself. So it doesn't make much sense. And I know that there's places in Mexico that might be able to use that in their own spaces.
And how did you like the floor, and what kind of critiques did you get for it?
So I think most people liked it. There were some, and I think Basti is one of them, that didn't really like the way the grip worked, not being able to slide. I think some people on either Spartans or Storm were also, I wouldn't say complaining, but they did think that it was a disadvantage for them based on their playstyle. And yeah, I can see that too. I mean, for me personally, when I played on it, it was not my favorite, but I think it was also the same for everyone, so it was not much of a factor.
Yeah, yeah. Like for me, as I said, it was fine, but especially the faster players complained a bit more, like Shoda or Basti, as you said. If you're really fast and doing those little stop and go motions, apparently it was way more slippery. And in the very beginning, when you do the opening rush and it almost created a wave in the middle, I was like, we were a little bit scared that it wouldn't be too durable, but it held up really great. So it's just a little bit of moving if a lot of players run at each other, but it held up really well. And so, yeah, obviously it's a trade-off, and to bring a floor to Mexico is a tough ask. We had the situation in 2018 where we played in Madison Square Garden, and we actually played in the Hulu Theater on concrete. And when we saw that for the first time, and there were little metal thingies sticking out of the floor, and we thought about getting a new floor because we thought it would not be possible to play on that concrete floor. But we looked a bit into options, which weren't really options, were way too expensive and wouldn't have been there fast enough. But that's how I knew that those portable floors are a thing. And I think as a solution for that, I think it worked really nice and it looked absolutely cool on camera. So will be cool for a school to get that kind of floor, but still I think like the wood floor we have in most venues in Austria is still better for dodgeball. But as you said, everyone pretty much had the same conditions. So Brandon, another thing I want to get into with you, because we played in Mexico City and it's about 2,200 meters above sea level. How did you guys prepare for it? Did you know it was a factor? How did you feel about it during play?
So we definitely hydrated ourselves a lot. I brought probably 20 liquid IV packets, electrolyte packets, and I was chugging those as much as I could. I did find myself uh, having shortness of breath constantly the whole time. So that was definitely really tough trying to combat that while on the court. But all in all, it seemed like we managed the elevation pretty well. How about yourself? How did you feel?
Yeah, pretty much the same. So we thought about bringing oxygen or something before the tournament because we had no idea how much of a factor it would play. In the end, it didn't work out. But then, like in the first game, it felt a little bit shocking how it felt because it was like during playing or during an intensive little rundown it was fine, but afterwards to recover from it was so tough. And so I felt especially for the players who are really fast and rely a lot on their footwork and their running, it was really really tough. So for us, like Basti players like him really suffered quite a bit from that, and I think it also had a big impact on the game itself. But apart from that, as you said, we had to drink a lot. I don't think I've ever drunken as much during a dodgeball league day and sweated as little because you couldn't really sweat because you couldn't move enough. And you would get out of breath before you started to sweat, which was a weird feeling. But on day two, it was much better. It seemed like after one day you sort of got used to it a little bit more, and also your play style adapted a bit. But especially in our game against Storm, it was really tough for us to basically play the way we wanted to play, and it got better and better, but it was definitely a factor.
There were a few times I felt like my legs just didn't want to move.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, the legs weren't even too bad. It was just like getting the breath back. It was once you exerted yourself too much, then it seemed like you were breathing in dysfunctional air, and it took just so long to get back to playing capacity. And so like the timeouts and some sort of issues with the stream sometimes really came in my favor there because wow, yeah, it was definitely a difference. And I played dodgeball yesterday on sea level again. Ha, it was easy. I never felt out of breath. It was beautiful.
It's funny for me because I grew up in Mexico City, and whenever we went from playing tennis at that altitude and then going to sea level, it felt the opposite way,
Yeah.
that you could pretty much do anything you wanted without getting tired. But after living in Boston for it's been 15 years now, going back to Mexico City feels the opposite. So
Yeah.
I can definitely relate.
Yeah, for sure. Like my whoop for the first few days told me that I'm dead. Basically, I had to breathe, I think, four times more every minute, and my oxygen level was way down, and I felt actually quite fine, and jet lag and all that stuff wasn't too bad, but really getting used to the air was probably the toughest part. And as long as you moved normally, you didn't even really feel it. But as soon as you did a little bit more, it was really definitely feelable. So yeah, but it was also like the same for everyone, except for maybe Lobos who are used to it. But yeah, I think it definitely um, was good for the teams that are used to a slower play style. Like when our ninja team played Hex, it was so much more comfortable for them than to play against Spartan in the first game because like the pace of play is so much slower. And so I think it definitely was in favor of teams that were just a little bit slower on their transitional game and were more relying on their throws in the end.
That's a very good observation. And I wonder what would have happened if you were able to bring the oxygen to Mexico, because that could be
Yeah, definitely.
pretty good.
I honestly don't know how that would work and how much it would how much of a difference it would make, but it should make a difference because refilling your oxygen is definitely like the bottleneck. And if you could refill after each set and get a few breaths of clean oxygen in, probably would be nice. But yeah, maybe next time we'll figure it out sooner. But yeah, as
Yeah, and, I think Martin contacted me like a couple of weeks before the tournament about the oxygen and whether it was allowed or not, and we didn't have a rule for it, and I didn't know if it how it worked with professional leagues. So I talked to Darko, and everything was all set. But I guess in the end, logistics was the limiting factor.
Yeah, apparently it's not, because in Austria it would be very easy to get those, even through Amazon or something. But in Mexico, we just couldn't, and our local contacts couldn't acquire any as well. So in the end, we said, it was sort of half meant for real and half as a joke. And then with time, we thought, it might be a good idea, and it probably would have been a good idea, but yeah, for next time. And so everyone had I think no one got oxygen, so it was maybe fairer this way. So a little bit more into logistics with you, because I want to know really pretty much everything that needs to go on or go into such a tournament. As you said, 100 people for an 8-team event with not even 100 players. So what was the total amount of, maybe go as specific as you like. How much did everything cost? How much did you have to pay for the video production, the referees? How much for the volunteers? Obviously, the volunteers, but like, what does it take to make something like this happen in Mexico City?
So, and that's a good point, because Mexico City, the reason we chose it was because of the cost. And the production company P Exports is based in Mexico City, so a lot of their people are based there, and in that way we avoided having some of those travel costs and hiring local people costs that we would have incurred elsewhere. However, even then, it was an expensive event, I think, in the end, and we still have to close the accounts. There's still some payments that have to be made, but it was about $200,000 US, of which a little bit over half is on the production side. So basically bringing the cameras, bringing internet connections. We had 3 different types of internet just for redundancy. So we had broadband, we had cellular, we had satellite, just to make sure that when we were linked to Telemundo, we would not have any issues. And that obviously costs money. And then some things that were additional that could be potentially cut, but as I said, like we really wanted the athletes to experience this as a professional player, were things like the hotel costs, the transportation costs, which I would say between both in the end were about 50K US. So it's a significant amount of money, but I think it was definitely worth it. And the other things we could have cut were the tour to the pyramids, the small event we had after the tour at the restaurant. But at the same time, I think in the future that will pay off, because one of the criteria that tourism boards use when evaluating tournaments is how much impact they will have in terms of reaching new audiences and new people. And we wanted to capture that. We are serious about not only playing dodgeball, but also getting to know the city. And that was part of that, to show future cities that we could have an impact on their own tourism in the future. But I think in general, it is an expensive proposition to organize an event of this nature.
And how much do you think would it have cost if you do it in the United States or somewhere in Europe? Do you have any idea?
So that's what I'm looking at right now, because I think the next ones, the production company was floating the idea of Miami, which is a very, very expensive city, probably even more expensive than Boston. And then Europe has its own challenges. So many of the buildings are government owned. A lot of labor unions that increase costs for labor in terms of cameras and camera operators and other production elements. But I think that the next ones, we really want to look at other places to have a real tour of the world.
And like, have you got an estimate how much you would have to cut back to get it at the same cost, or how much more money we need from sponsors or someone else?
Not yet, not yet. I think in the next few weeks we'll try to pinpoint that, because that's part of the conversation we'll have with sponsors to see how much money we need and how much money they have to put up.
Okay, awesome. So let's jump a little bit back into the competition with you, Brandon. You had your first game against Licorn, and it was quite an intense start because obviously you probably were the favorites in that group, but it was a tough group, and probably from your side as well, Licorn seemed like the um, easiest of four really tough teams to beat. So how did you start into that game? Because it was a really intense game from the very beginning on. How did you feel about that?
I think starting on the wall side created its own difficulties. They were getting balls back, and we really weren't able to counter from the back line. And they came out. They came out firing. They were hitting their shots. We were a little laggy to begin the tournament, and we just said to ourselves that if we can get through the wall side and get to the other side to have the wall with us, I think we'll be able to take it. Another thing I wanted to point out with Licorn is their corner play, their wing play is exceptional. They really flow their team through those two guys, and if they come out hot, then
Mm.
you're in for a tough game.
Yeah, I think the connection is a bit off. Maybe Armando, do you want to step in?
Sure. I think from the beginning, as Brandon said, we had a little bit of a slow start to both the Paris and the Storm game, but in the end, we were able to find the same pairs we were working with and um, start producing our own hits and then our own style of play, and trying to make sure that that's the tempo we wanted on the court at all times, which helped us a lot in setting the tone and starting getting points on the board. The Storm game was really close, as you see, as you know, but I think probably really good for television was one of the most exciting ones I've been in for a while.
Okay, so were you very happy with Aaron to basically give away to win just for the fans in front of the television to be really excited about it? Was that a tactical decision by you?
I wouldn't put it or take it that far, because I think if we would have won that game, our game against you would have been way less stressful.
Mm.
And you said we were the favorites in the group, but to be honest, all the models were indicating towards Nutcrackers being the number one out of the group stage. And I think maybe without those factors that you mentioned, the altitude, the floor, it would have been a different story, because I still think that Nutcrackers are the team to beat. But in the end, I think the cards fell in our favor, and we were able to make the most of it.
Mm. Okay, I saw that game against Storm, and it was a really tight and very entertaining game. Really cool to see. A lot of really hard throwers, lots of very athletic and aesthetically pleasing dodgeball. So it was also cool, like at that venue, that you had just this one court and could be really close to the action and see everything in a very crisp lighting. So that was also cool to experience right there. And but yeah, let's get into a little bit of the play with you, Brandon. Like, obviously for us, we had our first game against Licorn, and we really wanted to make a statement. We've played them for a few times before, and we saw them play against you guys and saw them really come out strong and firing. So we knew we had to get in there really hard and fast, and we tried to put as much pressure on them as possible, and had a really great first game, and everything's felt smooth. Obviously the air was definitely a factor. But in the first game, we sort of didn't feel it too bad. We could rotate a lot. We had all our players to full strength, and so that game felt really easy and like the way dodgeball often feels for us. And then the second game we played against Storm, and we knew we sort of had to win it. But since you drew to them, it was, even if we wouldn't win, we knew we'd still have a possibility to play against you guys, which was really nice of you guys to draw against them. But we still couldn't take it to our advantage. And the game against Storm, that was just one of the worst first halves we've ever played. And I think like there was a lot of factors going into that. Obviously, they're an incredible team. They have really good players and just great throws. And for us, we had a little bit of injury stuff. We had a little bit of problems with the air, especially in that second game. I don't know if we overextended ourselves in the first game and couldn't completely recover to the second one. So I don't know if that was a factor, but definitely it felt really bad. But obviously it was a tough game as well. So maybe it would have felt the same way if it was the first game. But then like it felt like our playing style really didn't work in that situation, because running down, our plan was obviously to run down the bigger opponents, the maybe a bit slower opponents, but we knew they had extremely strong throwers, good catchers, and so we had to tighten a little bit the gaps, but we just couldn't do it, and not sustainably. And then together, and which is another point we're gonna get into in a second, with the point system, we just really played a horrific first half with maybe a few bad luck or stupid decisions as well. But like I think at one point it was 10-2, and yeah, and it just felt bad. I don't remember dodgeball feeling that bad for a long time. Um, but then we came back again. We tried to get our heads into the game. We really made a good comeback. I think at some point it was 11-8, and we lost that set as well when it was 11-8, because I think who caught me? Someone caught me with the ball in the hand for the second time, which was sort of a neck breaker. And then it got away from us again. But we sort of could never play our dominant, aggressive style of dodgeball. It felt just really like we're hitting a wall. But heads off to London, they prepared very well to play against you guys and us as well. So that was really good dodgeball on their side. And then we had to play against you guys, and we know for both of us it was pretty much do or die. So Brandon, maybe talk me through, how did you get into that game? What was like what were your thoughts behind that?
So, before I dive into it, since it is the game against you guys, I wanted to publicly issue an apology to you, Basti, and your team for what happened with the challenge against you. The way it looks on camera and the way I felt it in the moment, I didn't even react as if I got hit. I don't want to be publicized as that type of player. And the public um, note was published. So I will be sitting one match in Vienna calling as the way it should be. And I will be better as a player on the court. So I wanted to publicly apologize for what happened there.
Yeah, I'm very glad for that. So I think also the statement, I think many people have read it. Joe sent it to me. I told him, like, there are no hard feelings from us. Obviously, I think that's a very good, point for the challenge. Why the challenge is so important, and maybe a really good feature for dodgeball, and maybe we get to talk about that as well. But yeah, it happened. It happened to us as well at that tournament. So I don't have a lot of high ground to stand on, because we got challenged as well for a hit, and it was a hit in the end, and very clearly spotted on camera. And I still am very I don't know. I still don't know how to feel about it, because I've experienced somewhat a similar situation with myself in league a few weeks ago. So I'm still of the opinion that you usually feel every hit, and even if it sort of bounces off something, or that you just feel where it hits you, but apparently in some situation it doesn't. And so I'll definitely give you the benefit of the doubt here. I haven't seen you as a unfair player ever before. So we don't take that personally. It was a challenge by our retriever. So shout out to Benny Jean Favre for this great challenge as a retriever. Yeah, but I think it's also very professional and a very good step to publicly as a club sort of do a statement for that. So I think that is a cool thing of you guys to do, and it is obviously great that you're not going to play the final in Austria against Nutcrackers and sit that one out. That is very good. No, I think it's really cool that you sort of address it head on. And yeah, it happens in dodgeball. We're not gonna carry any bad feelings towards you because of that. And yeah, but I'm glad that you approached it that way. So let's get into that game. And he's gone. I think he made his point and we lost him again. So Armando, you're gonna have to step in for Brandon's internet connection again.
Sure. So as I said, the game good. So the game against Nutcrackers was really tough for us in many aspects. I think going in, we considered you the favorites, and also going in, it was tough mentally also because we knew that whoever won that game was going to make it to the semifinals, and whoever lost was going to the positional games. So considering ourselves the underdogs was, and not only that, we had never won against Nutcrackers in the past, so there were a lot of factors. At the same time, we had done our homework in terms of how we wanted to handle the game, what to do in certain situations. So we knew what to do going in. And in the end, I think both Adam, Mike, and Murphy really did an amazing job in terms of their performance. It's been one of the best I've seen, especially Mike, in a very, very long time. So that helped a lot. And during the first half, being able to get a pretty big advantage in terms of the score, it really helped us through for the rest of the game.
So, Brandon, I think you're back. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we prepared for you guys for now 2 years since the first Vienna calling. We viewed you guys as the top dogs, and I was given the task to basically protect myself at all costs against Bafsti's speed. And the way that we were able to make our hits when they really counted, I think separated the score, because to be able to hold you and Bossy down is extremely difficult. So I think it came from our middle people, our middle players, getting those single ball hits that really made the job of Adam and myself a lot easier. And you know, I got a chance to play in front of you, but you got me on the toes, and that was pretty nasty, I gotta say.
You played in front of me?
Yeah. At one point, McGee said, "Go play in front of Stefan," and I was a little confused at the time. I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, "Wait, I thought you wanted this." So I'm like, "All right, I'll go over there." And you threw a long shot that I didn't expect you to throw, and you got me right on the toe. I was like, "Damn, I wasn't ready for that one."
Yeah, playing against Bastian then against me, that's very different play styles. So that's definitely not an easy task to switch between the two of us. Yeah, but I honestly haven't watched the whole game back. I've watched the beginning now because it's still a little bit sore. But yeah, it felt like against we just started off where we ended against Storm, and we just couldn't get a foot into the game. And like the first 4 sets, I think we were always sort of level, and it felt like everything was really fought for. And then pretty much Aaron made a hit and a catch off the hit, and it was done, Phil. And so it felt like always something happened in the last few seconds that sort of completely killed our set, and we always lost 2 points. We just couldn't handle the 2.1 point difference, and sort of always failed to secure 1 point or not lose 2 points. And so I think it was 0-8 at some point, and it felt like a struggle. As you said, Mikey was incredible. We knew he would be hard to hit, but we just didn't manage to hit him at all. And we really tried to not focus on him too much, to not waste too many balls, but we still tried it way too many times, and he just survived everything. And then you have Smurf on the other side, who also played a terrific game and just killed us with hits, with dodges, and with catches. And then obviously you on the side really held your own against Basti, and Basti, you stole his last breath pretty much. So I think, I don't know if it was in the Anarchy game or in the Storm game, or maybe in both, where it was really like we need to switch something up because it's just not working for him. And then we put, I think, Flo against you, and maybe Mottle as well for a few sets. But it was just really tough, especially with your guys' throwing power, which you always had. But now the cohesion and protection you gave Mikey and your middle players was just something we really couldn't fight our way through. And so I think that was something we really realized during that tournament, when you sort of managed to break our speed and our gameplay and our cohesion as a team. Then, especially for the squad we brought, we just didn't have the throwing power to counter it. And if you have really good pressure on the wings and people in the middle like Mikey or Aaron um, or Johnny, it is just so hard to get hits on them through the single ball attacks, and we just did not have the throwing power to sort of overcome that discrepancy or deficiency. And so we tried everything. I think it was a good game. It was a tighter game than the scoreline showed in the end, because we just couldn't get a foot in for the first 15 minutes, I think. But that was actually a game I really enjoyed playing. So I think it was one of the coolest games we've had. And obviously, it's the first time you guys beat us. But as you said, it's been a long time in the making, and you just really looked sharp as a team. And it was just really tough to play against you guys. But it didn't feel like in the Storm game, it felt really like we just didn't play great dodgeball and just couldn't hold ourselves. But against you guys, it felt we played decent dodgeball, but you were just one step ahead, and we just couldn't get that last few percentage in that we would have needed to be more competitive. So yeah, it was definitely a heartbreak to win those two games and know that we were out of the semifinals. But yeah, that was definitely a game where you guys were just the better team, and we need to go back to the drawing board and see what we can get in the future to try to step up and battle that kind of dodgeball.
Well, and you'll get a chance very soon in Vienna, so
that is true. That is
we're
good.
definitely looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Those adjustments.
Yeah, us as well. And also we got hopefully our full squad for Austria as well, which, because we obviously had through 3 players who are not playing for us, who are really good players, and whom I play a lot in the national squad as well. But it was still like they play a very different style in their club teams, and as much as they were often a help, it was also, we just couldn't get the cohesion that you guys seem to get so fast in your team after one tournament. And for us, it really took a time, and we never really got there. So I think for the future, that is definitely something we have to take away from this as well, that it just needs a bit more time or more actual emphasis to integrate players into that team, because we had a way more training sessions than you together. But still, I think we relied too much on knowing each other from the national team, but the roles are just different there than in our team. So yeah, let's see if our young guns from Austria who couldn't attend Mexico City, if they can help us and play and maybe keep up with Mikey and you guys.
No, absolutely. And the other thing that you mentioned is that the score line doesn't really reflect the back and forth in the game, because if you break down the sets, I think every single one of them went down to 1 versus 2, 1 versus a very, very small margin. So I think in the end, it could have gone either way. Murphy had not made one of those amazing catches towards the end of one set, or if the scoring system had been different, maybe we would have adjusted your end set style or strategy. So I'm also interested in seeing what you think about that. Although I'm not sure if you want to cover that later on in the interview, but
Yeah, sure. Definitely. We talked about it a little bit afterwards, but I still want to get into it because now a week has passed and we can reflect on this a little bit more. But before we get into like the second day, is there anything from your side when you look at the whole event and all the preparations beforehand and stuff like that, where you how do you feel about it afterwards? Are you happy with everything? What are things you would change if you have to do them again, or that you want to get away from it for the future?
so there definitely is some adjustments that we would make, and I think we really accomplished all the goals that we had. As I said, Telemundo loved the production. They're already talking about expanding their coverage of dodgeball, so that's great. At the same time, it's also challenging because now we have to find the content to give them. So that will be a challenge for the next few months, but hopefully we can bring something to keep the momentum going and keep growing both on the court as we had been doing for the last 15 years, but also off the court in terms of publicity and getting more interest into the sport. And logistically, I think there were a few things that we could have changed in terms of, for instance, the way the lineups were communicated through the refs, in terms of some of the glitches we had with the clock management system. So that definitely is some room for improvement in the future. But in the end, I don't think that really affected the game flow too much. Obviously, did at some points, especially for some of the games. But all in all, I think I'm very happy, and it's also good to have some adjustments to make. Otherwise, it would be very boring if everything had been perfect.
Definitely. We need some mistakes, and that's for dodgeball and for everything around. Yeah. So I can, from my side as well, like as a player experiencing that tournament, everything, as I said, felt very professional and I loved everything about it. There are obviously always those minor mistakes and like the clock not working or the internet connection on the first day and stuff like that. But I feel like that's just something you have to get through to learn from it, because there are so many variables and so many things that you maybe don't account for because it's um such a complex issue, the whole tournament. And so even if you try to be ready for everything, there's still going to be a few little details. But as you said, there wasn't anything that was completely destroying the experience or the gameplay. In the game against Storm, there was a lot of problems. I think it was with the internet connection. Also, one of the refs who was doing the clock didn't understand the program or couldn't handle the program. So that was definitely something that was a bit annoying in that game, but that game would have been annoying either way to us. So don't know how much of it was outer circumstances or the game itself. But apart from that, there is so much positive to take away. And now looking back on those games and seeing the stream and the quality and also the reffing and the challenges and everything, it is just a complete pleasure to watch those games. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenging system and how we can, how you think about it. How did it work? Would you adjust anything for the future, or how did you feel about that?
So first of all, I think the main reason for having a challenge system was that I was addressing one of the main feedback points from Worlds when we also broadcasted on PX Sports. And I'm not sure if everyone in the audience knows this, but Worlds was the first time that we had live broadcast in 32 countries through PX Sports. So we had some data to go to analyze and see where we could make adjustments. And the number one feedback was that people didn't like the stoppage time. There was, especially towards the end in the finals and semifinals, for some reason, and I'm not sure if it's because of the stakes of the game, and refs really want to make sure that they make the right decision. they have a lot of stoppage time, and where they confer, and then they come to a decision. But there's two problems. One, that it breaks the flow of the game, which was the main complaint. But number two is that the audience didn't really know what happened. There's no microphone on the refs. They make a decision, they inform the players, but then the audience doesn't know what the outcome was. So we were trying to address both problems. Number one, by asking the refs to try to limit those conferences as much as possible, and number two, by giving microphones to the refs so that when they did have to make these conferences, the audience also knew what happened. But at the same time, we didn't really want to impact the gameplay, because if the refs make a bad decision, sometimes, for instance, if the ball bounced or it didn't bounce, the player might feel it, but he doesn't know exactly what happened. So if we were not going to have the refs come together and talk about it every single time, we wanted to have an option for the teams to be able to tell the refs themselves what they thought happened in the form of a formal challenge, and then the refs could not only talk about it but also look at the video to see exactly what happened. And we had so many cameras that it was really easy for them to do that. So and actually also a huge shout out to PX Sports, because they really went above and beyond of being able to provide the full feed from the mobile unit to monitor really close to the court, to be able to logistically being able to do that in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would change is have a limit for how much you can review the play without going too much into it, because I think for other sports it might not be such an issue right now, and even though they're also try to have decisions quickly, but for dodgeball we still have a challenge because people are not very familiar with the sport. They're watching for their first time. You have a stoppage that's 2 or 3 minutes long, they'll just move away from the channel, and then you lose a viewer, which is really bad, because the broadcasters do track those ratings and how they change throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
So losing a viewer might not seem as much, but it does limit the number of opportunities we will have to get dodgeball in front of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on that side, I have a little bit of a critique, which is that the rules for the tournament came out. I think it was very late that everyone knew what the specific rules were for that tournament. And so I think there were a lot of stoppages still, because either players or coaches or refs, but not so much on the ref side, more on the players and coaches side, were not sure about the rules. And maybe there was someone tossing a ball behind the return line, and they thought, obviously, WDBF, that is allowed. British dodgeball, it's not allowed. In Austria, it would be not allowed. So there were lots of different views. And because the rules were given out quite late, it sometimes happened that coaches or players thought that they were in the right, and then the refs had to sort of explain it in the game, and it was a stoppage time during the game. And of course, on the one side, you could say you should read the rules and you should know that, so we should never talk about it. But then again, since lots of it was last minute adjustment, there was sort of a wiggle room where the refs took it up on their own discretion to say, okay, that's a valid point or not. And so that, again, in the beginning at least, there were some stoppages because of that, and also maybe a bit of confusion because of those new rules. So what I wanted to ask you is, like, who decided to change the rules in that way, and what do you think about that in hindsight? What can we improve for the next tournament?
So a lot of the rule changes were made to help with the game flow. So try to address some of the concerns that the viewers had from Worlds. The one thing I would change is probably making a players group where everyone had access to this information, because I think some managers were really good at communicating with their teams and their clubs on not only the rules but many other aspects, whereas some were a little bit slower or probably didn't even do that at all. For instance, I think Lobos had a really hard time getting information, and That also goes to your point about the rules, because we I think we released the first version in November or December, and then we released the second version I think in January or early February, based on feedback we got from teams. But I think many players had the wrong version of the rules, so the one from November.
Mhm.
Many others received them very late. So trying to address that for the next edition would be important also, because I think the rules are fundamental in the way the game is played.
Mhm. Okay, so and obviously we also had like that rules meeting the day before the tournament as well, where some minor nuances were basically spoken out so that everyone knew, but still that was quite short, very short towards the game. And even though if people talked about it or told it to their teams, not every player knew every rule, and that is something we always struggle with in dodgeball. And it's everything. If you go to a new tournament, no one knows, can we do multiple leap of faiths at the same time? Do we start on the inside? Do we start on the outside? So I think that's maybe a shout out to the ruling committee on the one side, but also like to tournament hosts to really stick to one playbook. Because as you said, it's, if not even the players and the coaches and the refs know which rules we play by, then it's going to be impossible for viewers to have any idea of what we're doing here. And on the other side, what you said, which I think was really cool in this case, was that you could hear the refs talking about it. You had a commentator who tried to put the listeners on, or the audience, through the situation. You had multiple camera angles, you had slow mo. Sometimes it was exhausting because there were so many slow mos of the same situation, because it just took some time to get his decision. And that is definitely something we have to learn. But still, that was such an improvement as well in terms of professionalism and seeing the situation and being able as a viewer to live with that situation, which is really important. So yeah, um, you said PX Sports did a really great job. They really fed the refs the different camera angles, and Bruno told me they were just going angle 4 of this camera at this time, and they were just feeding them the slow mo, which is obviously something that is perfect for this and is probably not sustainable for pretty much any other format. But still, I think a sort of challenge system is a very important thing for that sport. And you can see if the stream is in a good quality, you can see a lot of things. And so I think we should really think about implementing it, even if we don't have 8 camera angles and not so much time. But it can really make some decisions easier for the ref and maybe reduce stoppage time to a tolerable minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only other point I would like to make is that you're right that there's a lot of differences between rule sets. I think, for instance, and you could see it on the stream also, many of the UK players, their first instinct when they get hit is try to pass the ball, which
Yeah.
is allowed in British dodgeball, but it's not allowed pretty much anywhere else. So I think as dodgeball matures, we will start converging towards a single rule set. For this tournament, we tried to base the rules on the WDBF one for most of the rules, except on cases where, one, it didn't make sense for spectators, which was the most important one, and number two, where it made the refs' job more difficult,
Mhm.
because we really wanted them to make split-second decisions without having to come together. So, for instance, I think in WDBF, if you get hit, you can still make plays
Mm.
until the ball dies. And Max was the one that brought this up and pointed out that it will be really difficult to make that split decision whether the ball had died or not before you could make another action. And that's why we went with the EDF rule of not being able to take other actions. But that comes with challenges. For instance, I saw many of the US players trying to make another play, which would be allowed in WDBF, but it was not
Yeah.
here or EDF. So you can sort of see those differences already. You know the different rules for the different styles, just on the way that players act on the
Yeah.
court, because that's their nature, right? So you will always see the British players try to pass the ball, and then they realize, and then they even like you can see their expression when
Yeah.
they know that they should put the ball down on the floor. But yeah, I think ideally at some point we will converge into a single unified rule set that will make things easier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a topic for a different podcast that I'm gonna have with Bruno, because the rules are still something I'm very passionate about, but I don't know them, and there are so many different rule sets, and there are so many like discrepancies, but also just stupid rules that are just in there because they've been there for a long time, and some people don't understand it. And so yeah, I think it's always good to come from the side of making the life as easy for refs as possible and for the spectators without interfering in the general spirit of the game. But yeah, so I think the rules in the end were good and adequate, and I think the challenge worked really well. And I also liked that you sort of had a penalty if you made a challenge and it wasn't successful, with the timeout or a blue card, which I think is a really good idea. I think it would be even better to have, if it's possible technically, to have, as long as your challenge was valid, that you can still have another one, because then it becomes, again, in the beginning of the game, maybe you're not like, that's not worth it to challenge that, because later on you might not have it. And so I think to maybe make that system even more even better for the game and for the refs is definitely something we can look out for the future. All right, so let's get into day 2. Brandon, you played, obviously your semifinal was against Hex, a team that you've played often before and that I think you've lost recently, at least at nationals in the men's. So how did you feel about that game, and how did you think about it going into it?
Yes, we did lose to them in nationals. I didn't forget. Um, so we knew we had a big, tall task with Ketchum playing in front of me and the quick, spider-like player with Shota in front of Adam, which both of those players kind of counteract what Adam and I are trying to do together on the team. With Ketchum's big arm and Shota's fast speed. And then they had exceptional catchers. I think they caught probably 7 to 9 of our balls in that semifinal. Um, so that made it extremely difficult. So to try and slow down that team, because they just rely on so much chaos in those close quarter exchanges. That was like really difficult, and we came out very strong to start. Uh, but we knew it wasn't going to be over because that team just doesn't give up at any moment. Uh, and then they started getting 4 balls on us, and they started double tapping McGee and Hill. Like they just took them out, and they started creeping back. And um, I think at one point in the second half, it was only a 3-score game going towards the end. So it was a tight match, uh, and in the end, we were able to pull it through. But I'll tell you what, I was definitely sweating because they were getting really close. And whenever you get close with Hex, anything can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you know why it got that close. It was not your guy's fault. It was Alex Rokash, who was like on the top floor watching the game with me, and he picked Justin Payan as his fantasy league player, and he was just talking shit about him because it was like, he's not catching, he's not doing anything for me. And in that moment he said that, I think Payan made 2 catches on McGee in the next 2 sets and just destroyed the next 3 sets in a row and just punished Alex for his doubt in greatness. So it's definitely Alex's fault for making that game as interesting. And from then on, it like sort of the momentum shifted completely, because as you said, you started off so strong, so competitive, so there was just one cohesive unit. And Hex is not a team of cohesion, it's a team of individual players. And once you give into that chaos and they get sort of momentum, every one of them can catch and throw and dodge really well. And once you let them play and let them cook, it's just so tough to play against it. I have that experience still back in my head from the US team at Worlds, which was pretty much the same thing, where you feel like you should be so much more dominant as a team, but every single one of those players can just turn a set around. And it was really awesome to see from the outside. Like in the beginning, you controlled them as a team, and I think in the first game, Spartans did that as well to them. But once you lose the cohesion a little bit and your momentum, and it starts to break on some edges, and Mikey gets caught twice in a game, suddenly it doesn't feel as effortless to play against them, and you overthink every decision, and suddenly you're in your head, and that's where they excel. And then you have just really capable dodgeball players who have so much individual skill that they can crush you as single players. And that was one of the most exciting games for me to watch, honestly, because it was so different style of dodgeball that we get to see on a usual basis, and to see in the beginning that the cohesive play is so dominant, but once it breaks away, you cannot play them. So to and I think that was also the same in the first game when you saw Spartans coming out really strong in the first few sets. They looked like they would just throw them out immediately, and then once they got their chinks in their armor, suddenly it didn't work anymore. And yeah, that was really interesting to see. And I think that is so much you can take away from a game like that, from an individual perspective, but also from a team play, because it seemed like you guys really learned from that semi-final, and then in the final there was no stopping you. So um take me, obviously that is like a much more contentious game for you guys, playing against Hex, knowing them well, knowing what each and everyone on their team is doing, and then playing against Spartans. What was like the feel coming from that semi-final going into the final?
Going into the final, I think we felt really good against Spartans because they didn't play that chaotic, big arm type play. Um, the only thing that was probably a little different for me is because I've only played against, I think, only three of their players on that roster. I've played against Wilkie, Whitelaw last year at UDO, and I played against Doherty at this year's UDO. So I had just a little bit of familiarity with their players, um, but it made it difficult with the others.
Oh, I think we've lost Brandon again.
All right, so I'll get back to the Spartans. Um, so playing against, especially Sood, I've never seen someone play like that before. He's an interesting cat, but I like the intensity he brings
Yeah.
to the game. I really like it. Um, so my job again, playing in front of Whitelaw, was to not let him break through my blocker and hold him down. And I think I did a pretty good job on keeping him where he needed to be. Um, and another thing is Mikey was throwing 30. I don't know what it is in meters, but he was throwing from the center
Yeah.
court on those guys, and it was
Yeah.
working. So they had no chance to really run us down from that point.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I've never seen you play that well in a game. I think that was the best game I've ever seen from you. You just no one got through your block, and Scotty really tried hard, and Suit as well. So that was definitely a big factor in that game, that you just collected balls and not hits, and Mikey could just play freely from the middle. And if Mikey starts hitting people and isn't possible to get him out, then it's just really bad for you. And every time they tried to overextend themselves to get one of you guys out, then just Adam was there punishing it. And so it felt like it was the perfect antidote to the Spartans game. And yeah, it was for television probably not that great of a final, but for dodgeball enthusiasts, it was just amazing how you guys clicked, how Mikey moved in the middle, how you played as a team and protected each other. And I think that was definitely the best game I've ever seen from you guys, especially in that first half.
Adam and Josh have been very good for us as a team to give us the intel before we even step on the court on what to expect um, from the opponent's side because they've played against them so many times. So the preparation for that team was very, very good, and I think we did a good job to prepare the Irish on to backtrack on Hex. Like we both helped each other out in that sense to prepare for the opponent because they in nationals Murphy and Adam were the only ones that got to experience playing against a team like Hex. So to prepare Josh and Johnny on what to basically expect from them, I think it put them in a better position. So that was a good thing that we had as a team going into these games.
I think one of the differences between the semifinal and the final is that whereas Brandon is right, we did a lot of preparation from both sides because, as you said, we've played with Hex for years, probably 8 years now on the US side, and Johnny, Adam, Murphy, and Josh have played with some of the Spartan guys for quite a while. So we both knew the teams we're playing, but the difference is that the US style is still a lot different from the European dodgeball style. And as a hybrid team, it's much more difficult for us to adapt to it because half of our team still is not very used to the way that US plays. Whereas on the Spartan side, um, the US based part of our team has been playing in Europe for 2 years now. So we're sort of used to the way dodgeball is played in Europe. And we were able to adapt much more quicker to that with the intel we had from the different team members.
It's tough to integrate players in your team, but when you manage to really get different components to your team and adapt them really well, and it clicks, then it's just such an advantage. And that was the first time that I felt like at UDO you clicked at some times and you were just a really good team, but it still didn't feel like it was that much cohesion and that you were playing as a unit. It was just a lot of really good players playing together, and it was the same for like barbarians who were also just really good players, but not all of them played together all the time. So you could really see that the gameplay was much slower, especially on your side. And now you were also able to adapt really fast to teams like Spartans who have a very aggressive style, or Nasties, and still manage to hold your lines and your positions in a much faster paced game. And that definitely was a big improvement and difference to your last appearance as a team, I feel like. All right. So from a production side, obviously the final was the crown of that whole tournament, but it was very one-sided. Did at any time did you tell the guys to just stop it for a while and let them get a breath in?
No, I mean, to be honest, that's one of the hard parts of being both a player and an organizer because you have competing interests. Actually, in fact, I was about to not play the final because of trying to make sure that everything was flowing great from the organizational side. But um, I think in the end, even if it was a little bit more one-sided than I would have liked, it didn't really matter much because the level of athleticism that we showcased made up for the score. And you have to remember that many of the people that were watching for the first time, so they don't have an investment in either of the teams.
Mm.
And the fact that one team is winning over the other doesn't really affect the way they're experiencing the game. It's more about what they see in terms of the plays that are being made, and I think those were still there. And
Yeah.
in that sense, I think even if the score was not as exciting as you could say, it was still very, very good quality dodgeball, and that's what matters in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely amazing quality dodgeball. And yeah, some games live because they are so exciting because of the scoreline. This was definitely just a showcase of dodgeball. But yeah, as someone who's been watching dodgeball for a long time, it was really fun to watch it. I would have much rather enjoyed playing it, but still, as far as watching games goes, this was definitely up there, and it was really cool to see. And also, um, like cool to see where dodgeball is going. If you combine really strong players, make a good team out of them, what's possible. And it felt like that Boston Anarchy team, the way you guys played that first half in the final was probably one of the best halves of a team I've ever seen played. So there was definitely something to learn from and for something for dodgeball to grow from. So definitely cool to see that sort of athleticism combined with really tactically sound dodgeball was was a sight to see for sure.
What I wanted to point out was like what's so cool about dodgeball is the different styles that face off against each other because you had us struggle against Storm and we ended up drawing with them. But then in the semifinals, you had Spartans beat Storm, and then we play Spartans, and we were able to do what we could do against Spartans, but they defeated Storm in the playoffs. That just makes dodgeball so cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And you could see that in the other group where Ninjas didn't advance to the semifinals because of one set difference, because Spartans lost to Hex, Hex lost badly to Ninjas, Ninjas lost badly to Spartans. And so in the end, it was, and Hex didn't even know that they were one set away from going out in the group stages because they didn't know the rules of how you advanced. And so Ninjas won by 6 points and they needed to win by 7 points in order to progress to the next stage. So definitely, as you said, matchups in dodgeball are quite interesting. And I honestly don't know if the surrounding things like altitude and knowing the opponents or not knowing them definitely adds something to the mix as well. And if you know the players really well and they're from your own league and you've played them 1,000 times, I think it loses a lot of that. But that is so cool about a tournament like this one, where you get so many teams from different backgrounds and bring them together. And that's something dodgeball needs as well to really progress in a new way, because you see the British way is different to the Austrian way, to the French way, to the US way, and you can make something even better from that. So playing wise, is there anything else you want to shout out or talk about from that tournament?
So yeah, I think the different playing styles definitely makes it exciting, and I was also very proud of seeing Lobos perform at a much higher level than I thought they would be going in. And not because they're bad players. I think they're excellent players individually, but they don't have the same exposure as most of the other teams, being sort of siloed in Mexico.
Mhm.
But I think being on the big stage and having the opportunity to show the world what they've been working on really motivated them to go the extra mile. And I think some of their games were really close. So big shout out to them also.
Absolutely. We obviously played them at sort of a bad moment because we just had lost our chance of going to the semifinals. So there was a little bit of frustration that we had to get off our chests. So we weren't too kind to them. But as you said, they are individually really good dodgeball players. All of them can throw really well, catch, can move very well. It's just a matter of getting the right tactical play. And I think for them, if they learn from this tournament and see what different teams are doing, they're gonna progress so much from that. And if they bring that to the Mexican League and stuff like that, it's gonna be such an important stepping stone as well. Because once you experience dodgeball like that, you really know where you have to work on to get to that next level. And I think playing wise and skill wise, they have everything they need. So it's going to be
And
interesting.
and not to do a small advertisement for the Anarchy Academies, but that's sort of what we trying to do holistically, is not only having this professional league but also having the entire pipeline.
Mm,
And one of our goals is to start these academies in Latin America to be able to bring tactics, bringing different types of strength and coaching and conditioning to the players, so that they can keep improving, and then having experiences outside their own countries to play with other styles and trying to improve the region as a whole.
yeah, that is absolutely cool. And I'm already afraid of what's going to come of it. That's going to be tough for the dodgeball world. Um, So maybe last point, unless Bren, you wanna get anything else out, focusing on the playing side, I want to go a little bit into the fantasy league as well, because I think that was a very novel thing that we got to experience, and it got a lot of people very motivated. And for me as well, watching a lot of games from the outside is just so different if you have sort of a buy-in, and it's almost like betting on sport, but even better if you can root for individual players. So I was Suit and Doherty were on my team, and so I had a lot of fun, just cheering for them in that final. And then on the other hand, Smurf. And so it was just, as a viewer of dodgeball, I think it brings so much buy-in, and it worked really well. So tell me a little bit about that fantasy league and what it entails.
So actually, Brandon was a lot of help because I personally don't play fantasy sports,
Ah,
and I
nice.
didn't really have a lot of experience on things like salary caps and how daily contests work. So Brandon helped a lot in that sense. Um, but yeah, I think it was just a small experiment to see how we could bring more engagement to the fans and bring more excitement to the game, not only to uh, players and viewers that are used to watching dodgeball and know all the players and how they perform, but also trying to expand it a little bit more. And I didn't really think it was going to be as successful as it was. So it's definitely something to look for in the future and see how we can expand it more, not only maybe in the Champions Tour, but also in other leagues elsewhere, because I think it does bring a different dimension to watching the game and, as you said, being involved and being more of a participant in the place than rather just watching passively.
Absolutely. And also the statistics that you guys made for every individual player, for every team, that is also something like we know a little about it from playback review. They're doing stuff like that sometimes, and in Austria we don't have that sort of thing yet. So if anyone does statistics, it's afterwards watching the game click by click and doing an Excel just for analysis. But that is just really cool to have those real life statistics in a game and seeing them afterwards. I think everyone was pretty hooked on that. So, what does it need to make that more sustainable for other leagues and championships?
That was actually one of the toughest jobs, I think. Uh, I, in preparation for this, I did one game of video, and it does take a lot of concentration, a lot of stamina just to concentrate and then um, input the statistics on the laptop or your tablet, wherever you're doing it. And big thank you to all the people involved in that. We listed them on an Instagram post, but both a team in Mexico City was doing them live, and then we had the Los Angeles Stats crew from LA watching the broadcast, and in many cases correcting the um, the stat lines from the Mexican team. There was an ability to flag events where you were not sure exactly what had happened,
Hmm.
and they were going back and reviewing those, and also just watching the game and seeing if there was anything that was missed. But yeah, definitely a team effort, a lot of investment in time from all of these people. Um, but at the same time, that does um, give opportunities of improving and making it easier for both manual entry and maybe having some sort of um, AI vision, being able to do some help at least in entering the stats, because it is a big task.
But I don't know how much work, and it probably was not worth it when you think about how much work it was. But I think as an experience for players and fans, it was absolutely cool. So I think that was definitely one of the things that really stood out and that made the whole experience even more just interactive as well for fans. And I know many players who were really hooked at home with their fantasy leagues and with that kind of stuff and the statistics. So yeah, there's a way to implement more of that. Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
honestly, I think that's one area that looking back, we would invest more in, because it just drives some many other areas, both in on the site, being able to see the real time statistics. We also had AI compute um, real time predictions based on who was on the court, how many, what the score was, the remaining clock time. So it just gives a little bit different view of each game that you can augment by looking at your mobile, looking at your tablet when you're watching the game on the side. So having like an additional screen helps a lot. And then it also drives statistics on the broadcast,
Mhm.
which is pretty much expected of every single major sport, at least in the US.
Yeah.
It's very statistics driven society, so being able to see those numbers on screen as they're happening, it's essential. And I think without those teams, it would have been impossible.
Mm, cool. Yeah, definitely a lot of manpower involved in there. So Brandon, looking back on last weekend, like what are your overall feels after the final? I saw you shed a few tears on that court. At least I saw that. Don't know, maybe it was just sweat. And before that, I've basically never seen you sort of smile on a dodgeball field. You're always a very intense player and you really lock into a game. But it seemed like it's sort of something really opened up in you after that win and that it really did mean a lot to you. So talk me through those moments.
Yeah. As everyone knows that plays against me, I am a very intense player. I think it comes from my background in American football. Uh, Basically, I'm not happy until I know it's over. And uh, I become a very emotional person when we complete the task at hand. And yeah, I did. I dropped to my knees because not only did I win, but me and my teammates have won, and I'm just so happy to be in this position on this team at this point in time. Uh, Approaching 30 years old and still in my prime, and to basically win a tournament like that, I just couldn't hold the emotions back, and I was just flooded with so much happiness for me and my teammates. But the only time you're going to see me smile is a victory. Um, and I'll never change as a player. I'll always be the intense player with dead set eyes on the opponent. And I don't like you for the 40 minutes that I'm playing you, but off the court, I'm probably going to like you.
I
Probably.
like that he said probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very important probably. So, and if you don't like me off the court, it's gonna be danger for one of us. No, I think that is because that is something that not many people know in dodgeball. Like dodgeball, many people take it not so serious, and it's always a fun time, and like the whole community is very close knit, so you know your opponents, and then when people are as intense as you are on the plane, it sets you off and sometimes feels a bit unused to. And I can really remember like playing against you guys in 2022 in Edmonton, where we like went for the shake hands in the beginning, and you guys were just all staring us down, and we're like, "Ooh, what's with these guys? They're quite intense." And then it took a little longer to get you guys to get to know you guys, and then figure out off the court you're really fun and you can smile and you can blink. And so getting those two sides, knowing those two sides, it's really fun. I love it. But I think it's also cool to have that sort of intense dynamics in a game. And so I think that's something as we progress to higher stakes, it's definitely something we will see probably more of. And also getting those emotions on the other side, seeing how much it really meant to you to win that game, and seeing those two sides is something everyone loves in sport. So yeah, it was definitely cool to see both of those sides of you. And afterwards, I think you probably like me because I brought you a drink and you were really nice. So I think the first time I saw you smile was after the first piano calling and was like, okay, he's fine.
I always like a good party afterwards. Don't let me fool you.
You're just a tough shell with a very sweet inside.
So so my girlfriend tells
Okay, I'm gonna have you on the podcast next. What's Brandon really like, and how often does he blink in a minute? That's gonna be the title of the episode. I counted. It was like once. It's not often. You should moisturize your eyes. It's very important for eyesight. But you seem to see very fine because you didn't miss a block in that game. I think, Amanda, you still want to talk about that trophy that you brought back to Boston that I just saw from the far away and which looked really, really cool.
Yeah, honestly, that was all Andrea's work, finding local artists to collaborate with, and she did an amazing job. I actually don't know how she managed to get them. They've produced pieces for Ferrari, Mercedes.
Wow.
They made a big alebrije, which is like a fantastical animal for the Champions League finals in 2022. So they're a huge deal, and uh, we actually didn't give them much time in retrospect to make the trophy. But when I saw it, I was actually uh, I told Andrea like I don't really want to give it away. Like I really want it for myself, and I think it was extra motivation for us to win it. But yeah, I think they did a fantastic job, and I'm glad that we were able to showcase their work to the world. And I think they also got a small interview in Telemundo, so they were pretty happy about that. So yeah, it was an amazing opportunity all around to be able to show the dodgeball community what Mexicans can do in terms of art, and also the larger Telemundo community of getting them to know these artists and what they have done in the past.
Yeah, that was definitely a very special trophy. I think it would have been the one that my wife would have allowed me to still bring home. Otherwise, I have to put them in a cupboard, but this one is very special. So I might fight you for it at some point. So it has to be a trophy that's passed on from this turn point on now. No, but definitely congrats from my side. That was an amazingly run tournament. Definitely the coolest event I've ever been to dodgeball wise. And even though, like from a sporting perspective, it wasn't what we personally had hoped for, but everything else was extremely cool and just such a nice experience all around. Also, as you said, the hotel was nice. The tour for the pyramids was also something very special because you had that very elite group of dodgeball players and bring them to a different country and let them experience some culture together as well, and had that fine dining in the caves, which is just a memory that you can't really value in money. So thank you so much for pushing the sport, and that was definitely a big step in a really cool direction. And Brandon, to you, that was the best dodgeball I've seen from you. You've just reached 30, so welcome to your prime. That is where it starts, not where it drops off. And I'm really looking forward to playing you guys in Vienna at altitude and try to run it back. You bring that trophy and we play for it. And Brandon is not allowed to play again. So just that it's official. Um,
So Stefan, like 2 months ago, I was on your podcast, and you asked how I was feeling about the tournament, and I
yeah,
told you I was an eternal optimist, and somehow I managed to get things done always. But I'd like to get your closer perspective of what you thought, what your expectations were going in, and if they were met.
yeah. So honestly, my expectations from the very first time I think that you talked to me about it, I don't know if it was at the first or second Vienna calling where we talked first, or maybe no, I think at the UDO last year when you approached me because of that tournament, and I thought, wow, that's a cool idea. We didn't know each other back then very well, so I've heard a few ideas before about dodgeball, and I'm very always quite careful unless I see hard evidence for anything. So I thought, great idea. If anyone wants to do anything for the sport, awesome, I'm all for it. And then as it progressed and you told me your vision and stuff, I was really excited for it, but also it seemed very far away. And then you talked, it might be in Mexico. We talked about where it could be, when it could be, and it just seemed, yeah, just like a bit utopian to me, because I know a lot of the realistics about dodgeball and organizing such a tournament. And and it's just a really big thing to do, and it takes so much time, so much effort, so many uncertainties, and there is not a lot of money. So I was a little bit skeptic, to be honest. But the closer it got and the more I listened to your vision and the more I knew of you and knew you, I was just hyped for it. And then I really tried to not have any expectations. For the last few weeks when we trained for it and knew everything that came out, all your social media posts and everything looked really cool. So I thought, okay, there's a lot of professionalism and there's a vision behind it. So I got more and more hyped and excited. But up to the moment of reaching Mexico, reaching our destination, and getting picked up by people with our club colors, and seeing the van, that was when it first really like settled in that this is real. And then also going to the venue for the first time, seeing like the organization side, seeing the hospitality of the Mexican people who welcomed us to the city and who really were there for us. It felt, yeah, it felt amazing. And then going to the flamenco bar, to the studio, and seeing the setup, all the lights, all the cameras, it just, yeah, it was definitely one of the coolest moments in my dodgeball career. And then when the first whistle blew and the first game Spartans against Heck started, I was just super hyped because the to see dodgeball in that light and in that setting was just something I didn't even know how much I wanted to see that. And yeah, it was absolutely cool. There were obviously some minor issues, like maybe a bit of communication, maybe a bit of the rules, maybe a bit of the floor, but all in all, it was perfect, and it was way better than I ever thought it could be. And yeah, just heads off to you, to your team, to Andrea, who really impressed me as well. And it was really nice getting to know her as well. And like the passion for the sport, the amounts you're willing to put into it, and then just seeing it play out on that stage, and all the Mexican community, all the people who put so much effort and love into those 2 days was, yeah, it was absolutely cool. Definitely something I will never forget. And in the beginning, many people ask me like, "You're going to Mexico City for 1 week to play dodgeball? That is completely ridiculous." And I was like, it is, but it's also really cool, and now I don't think it's ridiculous. Obviously, it was a long travel, but it was completely worth it, and it was, yeah, it was perfect. To be honest, it was just perfect, and I'm very happy that I got to experience it.
Awesome. Thank you, and that means a lot coming from you.
Thank you. So, Brandon, any final words from you? A last bit of wisdom or laughter?
One event. Armando is a wizard with everything he does. He always pulls it off. So believe in Armando when he says he's going to do something, because he's going to do it, and he's going to perfect it as best as he can do it. As far as gameplay, the amount of talent out there is incredible. Every single game was tough that we played, and that's why we do this as competitors. You know, we want to play the best of the best, and to be the best, you have to beat the best to get there, and that's what we do it for.
Yes, indeed. And those were his final words, and he left us again. There he is back. That was perfect timing, Brandon, for once. You just left us with a mic drop. So I think that's a good place to end this, and I hope to have you back on the podcast soon, Armando, with some new ideas, hopes, and dreams. And I'm definitely bought in to the dream. We believe in Armando. So everyone who can, please help support him and his visions. And thank you for letting us be a part of that journey. And I hope we can work together in the future as well. And yeah. And apart from that, see you in Vienna in a month or so. And we'll try to work on our dodgeball, and we'll get to try it out again and see what's happening. And maybe PX Sports wants to televise it. Who knows?
Well, there's talks about that, and the work is just starting. So yeah, more to come.
Absolutely. More to come. You heard it here first. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon, Armando, it's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, see you on the dodgeball court.